But here we go. All right, so today we are live with Ryan West, the CEO and founder of a Toronto-based startup called Cognota. So Ryan is transforming the field of learning and development platforms today, and today we are going to break down exactly what his company is about. So thank you so much, Ryan, for being on with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. This will be fun. Don't go too hard on me.
No worries. We'll start off with some softball questions because we do have a lot of tech founders and people who are really keen about SaaS. So if you could give us a little bit of background about yourself and how you started the company and what brought you to start Cognota.
Sure. So probably my background, if I have to kind of give me a check mark but behind one key skill is go-to-market strategy. But I've been an entrepreneur forever. I was pretty bad in school. And so I ended up dropping out of university just by default. Tried really hard, just wasn't for me. But ended up turning my dorm room into a competing kind of store to the campus tuck shop. Got in trouble doing that, so I took it online because they couldn't stop me doing it that way. And that was my first kind of experience doing tech and in that case e-commerce. But I converted it over time to a B2B kind of platform where we kind of franchise these like white labeled wholesale e-commerce stores to help people start businesses. It was kind of cool. Anyways, long story short, been an entrepreneur forever. At one point, I got a job to build go-to-market strategy for a company called WTG based out of the UK, and just recognized that their competitors, this company's competition, had corporate training services and they didn't. So I pitched the board to create a new revenue stream inside the business, and I oversaw the Americas. I had a counterpart who oversaw Europe, and it became like one of the most profitable divisions of the company. They eventually sold to private equity, and it was funny because the CEO sold off everything, but he negotiated to keep the training side of the business, split it off out of the deal. And I think it still exists, that part today, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, that's how I got into corporate learning. When Green Capital Partners announced kind of this acquisition or buyout, I wanted to go back to entrepreneurship, so that was kind of the push I needed, and still didn't have the big next idea. So I was consulting in L&D, kind of a cash flow business that I created. Was investing into some stuff. I invested into an idea that I created with my brother, who's 9 years younger than me. So I taught him how to be a CEO. I invested the money. He ran the company. It was called GoFishCam. It was a technology hardware company that we sold in 2019. And I kept doing the learning thing full time. Eventually, I built this conviction that learning and talent development functions in big enterprise, they don't work very efficiently. And it's not that they're bad business people. It's, they work for the biggest brands in the company. They have high degrees, much smarter than me as this dropout. but built a lot of conviction that they just didn't have the right systems to get access to data to become very efficient. And that built this thesis that, all these business functions have purpose-built operating systems. Like in software development, you have DevOps or, Atlassian that supports that. Or in marketing, you have marketing ops and you have HubSpot and stuff like that. And there was just no LearnOps that existed inside of the enterprise learning and talent teams. They had their content tools to create content. They had their delivery systems to deliver content to the learners, like the LMS. But they had no operating system to do their work, manage their work, and get access to data. And so that's when we had the big idea, like, let's create the LearnOps category.
So this is interesting, though, because usually people, they they fall into a category when they're creating companies, but you said that this is a category that you invented?
We kind of created the LearnOps category, an interesting place right now because, the beginning days, and it takes a long time. I don't know if I'll do category creation ever again, maybe. But at the beginning, it's just you talking about it. It's like, what category are you really creating if it's just you talking about it? But the market always had a pretty loud voice about, this is something and it's important for them. But now what's happening is analysts are really starting to talk about learning operations separate to Cognota. So it's no longer us talking about this, it's the industry talking about it. And seeing many more job roles with the job title learning operations even, which is kind of cool. Like in the thousands now, growing per year. And so it's really exciting because we, as a company, we've even banned the word creator internally. We don't refer to ourselves as the category creator anymore. It's category leader because that's what we are, because now analysts and a lot of people in the industry are talking about learning operations.
Yeah, and if you're a trailblazer in any category or doing anything at the very beginning, it must be very daunting as well to be that person. Yeah. How, when you were creating your product, how did you get feedback, and from whom did you get feedback? And even with your history, what was your go-to-market strategy when you initially started?
Yeah, it's tough because we didn't have the luxury of having a ton of cash and staying in stealth mode until we had a proper end-to-end B2B enterprise platform that did end-to-end learning operations. We had one feature and one workflow, and we had to take that to market while we were trying to build the rest of it. And this is an operating system is not a small piece of software. It's a wide piece of software. And then to add to the complexity, I wish our ICP, or ideal customer profile, was not enterprise, but it is. So it's 10x harder to be not only end to end, which takes a lot of time and money, but to be enterprise ready, to work with the biggest companies in the world, that requires discipline and requires a lot of things that you have to do as a software company that you wish you don't have to do, which takes a lot of time and money. And so it's 10 times as hard when it's enterprise as well. And it was already 10 times hard just trying to get to this end-to-end vision, when the reality is we started with one workflow and took that to market and sold it while we were kind of building other things. And some people would say no, great vision, but you're not doing that right now. And some people would say, I love this vision, we want to innovate with you and help influence the roadmap. We did that, no joke, for 5 years to get to a place where we could do end-to-end learning operations and actually do the thing that we preached fully. And we're there now, and we work with a lot of the Fortune 500. It's pretty cool.
Oh, and how is it? Because that's a big leap, working with Fortune 500s to just starting off with very, very minimal money and just having to gain that initial momentum. How was it to get the very first client? Was there somebody that you're hey, would you use this, and then you build from there?
Well, you got to sell your socks off, but the reality is, we did this program. We started as a service company, and we had a thesis for software. So we weren't a software company. We didn't even have one line of code, just an idea. And we did this program in New York called Start Ed. So I don't really look at ourselves as ed tech software, but back then, naturally I did. We look at ourselves today as just enterprise software. We sell to corporate talent and learning development teams, but that's very far off from an ed tech company, for example. But at the time, we thought it might be ed tech. So we because we just didn't know. So we joined this program. So for any ed tech people out there, there's a program called Start Ed in New York City. It's great. The founder's name is Ash, and really valuable. And one of the co-founders of that is named Jonathan Harbour. He sold the company to Pearson and then became CEO of Pearson. He's actually our independent board member today. And really smart team. But anyways, I joined this program, and we were the only company that did not have any software. And somehow when we graduated, somebody wrote something about us, like if we had this crazy software, and it made it into the newspaper somehow in Houston. And a small company called ExxonMobil read about it and said, we have this problem. We want to learn about the software. And embarrassedly, I was like, we don't really have software, but I have a plan. I could show you what we're doing. They're like, well, nobody's doing this, so come to our office and talk to us about it. And we did that. And they were like, and they never do this, so it's kind of like, 90% hard work, 10% luck, that saying. Really believe in that. I call that 10% the magic. If you work really, really hard and invest at 90%, then the magic happens every single time. Like, even when you think the business is over and the sky's falling, if you stick to the 90% hard work, you can't be stupid about it, meaning like there has to be something there. It can't be, if there's nothing there, then the magic won't happen, and you should probably not work on that problem. But there's something there, and you stick to the 90% rule, the magic will happen, which is the 10% luck. So in this case, the 10% luck kicked in. Exxon doesn't incubate anything. Like, they don't do that. And they gave us a sizable contract to help accelerate the software development of this idea. It was just on paper. And I moved to Houston and had badges to go to their office and stuff, and we worked with their team and got the first version of the software kind of out the door, which was only one feature and one workflow at the time to help with knowledge transfer, which was a big deal for them because they had all these people retiring and they needed to capture knowledge to teach people what to do with it. And that workflow still exists in our platform today.
Wow, that's amazing. So somebody wrote about your company. Exxon heard about it, and then even like with no software at all, they asked you to come.
And they wrote about it like if there was software, like this mature big piece of software. It was crazy. I didn't even know about it until they called me.
Wow. So this was like an idea that Exxon bought.
Yeah. We had some slides that we stood on stage and like kind of presented the vision and the idea, and so I guess somebody in there was a journalist and wrote about it.
Oh. So an interesting point that you mentioned too was, what did you say, like 90% hard work and then it's that 10% luck.
Yeah.
But with a lot of entrepreneurs who are watching, is there any way that you personally find out it's like that there's something here, there's like a spark in the product that I'm creating versus you just being tunnel vision, and even though it's not working, you just keep going? How do you balance those two?
Slippery slope, honestly. And I've been on the tunnel vision side earlier in my career. It's very dangerous for an entrepreneur because at the end of the day, time is the most valuable asset if you're an entrepreneur, especially. You have the same amount of time as Elon Musk has. He just figured out how to optimize it, and to do a lot of things. So it's an even playing field when it comes to that resource. And if you're working on something that you shouldn't be, you're wasting the most valuable resource on the planet, which is time, that you can't get back, right? And you can learn from it, but you can't get it back. So you have to really make sure you're not, and I use the word directly, like stupid about it, because it's slippery slope. And if there is nothing there, you should do what Kevin O'Leary on Shark Tank says, and you take it out back and you shoot it in the head. But you also don't want to give up too early. And that's why it's like a fine line, and it's a skill that you have to master. At Cognota, building a category We had people telling us that this is a bad idea, like analysts and stuff in the early days. It's all content, it's all delivery. The industry was built on content and delivery. Nobody cares about operations. But then you're talking to the heads of learning and development, the heads of talent development at the big companies, and they're like, our operations is a mess. I need to fix this. I don't have access to data. I can't make decisions. And then you're like, how much are you spending a year on training? And they're like, $50 million. It's like, well, your CFO probably cares that you can't do this. And so for us, it was really hard because we had one workflow. We had a vision to become this operating system, but we were nowhere close to being an actual operating system yet. We're trying to solve this problem that our product didn't yet solve, but we're trying to work towards the vision. And you had smart analysts telling you it's a stupid idea, but then the thin line was that the users, the heads of these departments were saying, no, this is a real problem for us, and we haven't seen anybody solve it. So the market has always spoken to us. It's always given us feedback, like the voice of the industry, to keep going. And even in times where we wanted to give up, and actually, if I knew how much time and money it probably would have taken on day one, I would have been like, let's go work on a different problem because this is going to be too hard. But your ignorance, like going into something, is actually a competitive advantage. Not knowing how much time and money and how hard it would be allowed me to get to where we were today. And then being smarter, because I've had failures in startups, being smarter not to rush the process, but not to be stupid about the process and fall in love with my idea, and the world's not falling in love with the idea. You have to listen to the market feedback. There has to be a strong market voice, and if there's not, then you might want to consider to work on something else.
Mm-hmm. It's a big thing too, that the mental barrier too, when you're building something, and especially again when you're creating a category. I think a lot of times it takes more of a mental toll to like keep going than the actual product. When you're also creating these products, how many times do you see that a lot of people, maybe they don't know exactly what they want until they see it? Do you see that a recurring pattern with like the product and with the features that you're developing?
Absolutely. And especially when you're creating a new category,
yeah,
it's very hard because people just haven't seen, in learning operations, people haven't seen certain workflows work together ever in their career, in their life, and they've been in the industry 20, 30 years or whatever. And so you have to be the innovator, where it's like nobody asked us for like our strategic alignment feature. No customer asked us about that. But everybody in the industry is talking about the problems of how hard it is to show impact of the investments they're making into programs. And the only way to show impact is if you can show how much time and money you're spending into things that actually the business cares about. Like, that's impact. And to the point where our sales team were like yelling at me, like, why are we working on this strategic alignment feature? Like, no customer's asking for that. And it's like, well, you need to do this if you want to get to a place where you can show impact as this team. So it's a risk, because the ideal place to be in software is you're doing everything based off of customer feedback. But when you're doing category creation, there's certain things you got to do that step outside the line where the market might not just know because they've never seen it happen like that. And we felt pretty confident about like our data points on why we needed to make this investment. And when we launched that feature, it became the most adopted feature in like the second day of launch. It was the most adopted, most used feature in the entire platform. So it's really hard because you want to follow just feedback generally is the rule of thumb. But when doing category creation, the playbook gets thrown out of the window a little bit, and it just makes building the business that much harder. But also that much more exciting.
Mm. And this is kind of taking a little bit of a turn, but one of the reasons that I also reached out was because your LinkedIn following is pretty impressive, and especially when you're selling enterprise, especially when you're selling B2B. How much do you leverage LinkedIn and then creating in public with LinkedIn, with the product that you're creating and with your customers?
Well, my team is leveraging it a lot now, but to be honest with you, like I kind of ignore it. I don't try and build my following or anything like that. I'm not investing into building my following, but in building kind of this category and being in the weeds like day to day for a long time, to seeing how this kind of unfolds, you build certain discipline or thought leadership, and so I do use LinkedIn to share what I'm seeing and to talk about like what we're seeing or whatnot. And now, because arguably we have the largest data set for learning operations than anybody in the world, we're getting smart on how to talk to that data. And so it's like really, in my opinion, might be biased, like high quality kind of information that we can share with the industry that people really want to know about.
Mm. And and again, especially since you're enterprise, it would be safe to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of the ICP lives there and is able to see the thought leadership and is able to see the data. Have you gotten feedback in that sense?
Feedback to the data, the specific data.
The data and anything that you're posting on LinkedIn, especially I would say the thought leadership and the category creation.
Well, we are starting to work a lot with analysts to do research on the data. So it's not like just Cognota's voice on it. It's like real industry researchers who are leveraging our data to do like real research for the industry with it. And because we help to provide that, we kind of have a seat at the table.
Awesome. The other shift that we talk about too when we're with a lot of the people that live stream is in terms of AI, and it's the hot topic that everybody wants to know about. With AI, what do you see it as? How do you see it as being implemented in your company, in your software, and where do you see it going as a whole?
So on our side, like what's cool is I think we talked about when we launched the company, our vision was to be an end-to-end LearnOps platform. That was the vision. Well, we've achieved that now, and sometime last year. We needed to reset kind of the vision statement and share that with the industry. Like, where will Cognota be by 2030? And so we already have something called LearnOps AI in the platform, which is a decision support layer on top of the workflows, meaning you can talk with this companion about stuff, and it will respond to you and give you access to data much easier than you having to filter to find it, and help you work a little more efficiently and quickly. And where we're advancing that is because a LearnOps platform unifies all these workflows, and without an operating system or a LearnOps platform, those workflows are disparate. Like the option is work in disparate IT tools and a few manual processes for your operations, or use Cognota. Like that, those are really your options. And if you're using disparate IT tools, there is no AI strategy because AI requires data, right? And so if you have data silos, you have no AI strategy. You'll have pockets of AI in your learning management system, in your authoring tool, whatever, but operationally, you have no AI strategy. It can't work. So in a LearnOps platform, because we unify all these data sets through the workflows, it becomes really interesting. So again, we have kind of a 4-phased investment thesis into this. We have the counselor, which we call LearnOps AI. We're making investments into agentic workflows. So, we already have all the workflows, so making them smarter. And then we'll start to build more agents and operators inside each workflow until we get to a point of autonomous operations. And so, this is like a 5-year plan, which we've already started to execute into, and maybe it gets accelerated, but it's also timing of the industry. We sell to a lot of like banks and insurance companies and stuff like that. They can't even buy AI right now because of InfoSec stuff at the enterprise level. So we have to also time the release and stagger the investment levels we make towards this to meet the timing of the market. Because, if you just push out a lot of the AI investments too early, might be cool because you have that as a leading platform, but nobody can buy it and you hurt the business. So it's a timing thing, but we have a pretty thorough roadmap on what to do here. And, the reality in HR and learning and talent is that there's shrinking budgets and you have to do more with less. And so we think we can be the backbone for these teams so that they can 10x productivity because we're matching AI and humans together to do the work throughout the entire workflow and operational workflows.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot also about the tedious tasks too, or at least that's what I've understood from a lot of SaaS companies that I've spoken with a few people that listen and are excited about starting a business or going into this realm of entrepreneurship. How do you think that AI is going to help them in the next 5-10 years, specifically with starting a business, and let's say specifically with software as a service?
How do we see the outlook of AI over the next decade?
Yeah, if you could estimate.
I think all software companies are probably in trouble, and it's going to be really interesting. We can't even comprehend like what the world will look like in 10 years. Think about where cell phones were 10 years ago. I found this the other day, which was kind of cool. I put it on my desk. Remember that? That's probably
nostalgic.
not even 10 years ago.
It's a nano, right?
Yeah, and the reality is like you had self-driving cars like 10 years ago, and AI's actually been around a lot longer than kind of, more so than what people think right now. So it's just accelerating at a hyper scale, and it's going to be hard for companies to keep up, I think. And I think there's a huge monopoly and war happening for some companies like Microsoft, where they're just going to own everything because of the frameworks that they already have. Like think about it, Microsoft owns LinkedIn. So they have all the skills, taxonomies across the world. They own OpenAI. It's going to be super hard. They already manage all the daily workflows with Teams and Planner and so they just have this unfair advantage that with infinity amounts of resources that it's kind of scary, to be honest. It's but people still need to compete, and so I think that you'll see a lot of M&A activity in order for like other big players who might not be that big to compete and to stay relevant. And there's just going to be so much advancement. I remember watching the Jetsons as a kid, and I think that's really going to be our world, like flying cars and all of that, like within 10 years.
I'm be excited for that time. We're both from Toronto, you and I, and I'm already seeing the hoverboards everywhere, the ones with the two wheels on the side.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm excited to see how it's going to be looking like in a few years. But I don't know if like you have the like optimistic perspective of it too, or it's kind of like 50-50, that at least like the smaller players, they need to hire less team. So maybe like one.
No, I love that. Even at Cognota, we're working backwards a little bit into that, because startups nowadays have an unfair advantage where they can be powered a lot more by AI. And you're seeing 5, 10, $20 million companies be built with like 10 people or less. And so teams need to like really reinvent their operating models right now. We're doing that a bit at Cognota, where we're hiring people in roles, but if you're a functional leader, don't ask us to grow headcount if we haven't put like AI layers into the business in those functions or whatnot, because like we want to be efficiently focused first, so that we have a much more scalable business model as we move forward, because less is more a lot of the times. You get to move faster, and also your team gets to win much more. There's a thing in SaaS, the headcount per ARR, and like I think like what was it, like what's that web platform again with all like the influencers that go on it and create like a business, if you know what I mean. I mean OnlyFans.
The social platform?
Yeah, OnlyFans. But they only have 40 employees, and they're like $1 billion in revenue or something crazy like that. Like, how much do you think each of those employees get to take home? A ton of cash, because they're running a big business lean. And so that's an important metric, because if your company is efficiently operating, and every employee invests into that happening, like you get to take home more money at the end of the day. The company's not just going to keep it all; they're going to keep people incentivized.
And to wrap up, I have 2 more questions to keep it within time frame.
Sure.
But for the person who is looking to start a SaaS company in 2025, what piece of advice would you give them?
Yeah, again, like really building those AI layers on day one. And from from a foundational perspective, because that's just going to give you more efficiency, allow you to build the business with less capital. It'll allow you to optimize time, which is the most precious resource again on the planet. So it just becomes so much easier for you to do that. Like you don't, to do certain things. And then also, I'm a big believer of never building one line of code until like you've talked to the market to get feedback, and like build prototypes, like front end application prototypes that don't require code, images that you can click through and get feedback, and then you go and change the images, and then you get feedback, and you go and change it, so that people can like see how you would solve the problems for them. And that's super cheap to do when you take that approach, and then you have more certainty on what you're building is the right thing to build. Then you build the engine behind it to make it all work or whatever. But nowadays, from a product perspective, like you can do like vibe coding for the front end design stuff, and so you don't even need to hire anybody. You could have no technical capability and build an application by talking to who you think your customer profile is going to be, asking them for feedback, which eventually leads for money, and keep iterating, taking this approach and showing the market that, and sitting in your basement or your mom's basement or at home or whatever, and building this like enterprise company that you can then start actually taking to a commercial model by bringing in AI, generating revenue, and then hiring people. So you could do this all without raising even $1 from venture capital right now, which is amazing, because that's the difference of you having to do this 3 times to build like legacy wealth, or do it 1 time and never have to do it again if you didn't want to.
Yeah, building in public I'm a big advocate for that as well. And again, especially with B2B companies, just from my experience, LinkedIn is always the way to go. But yeah, it's interesting you say that with building in public and getting feedback, and there was never really a time up until more recently that you could do that.
Yeah, ask for money and you get feedback, ask for feedback and you get money. That's the best way to build. Hey, I saw that you're in sales. Maybe I'm building a sales application. I would love to get your feedback about this problem I'm solving. Most humans want to help humans, right? Like, most people are good people, not all. And if you ask them for feedback, they'll usually be like, sure, I'll give you feedback. So you do it once. And then at the end of the call, this was super valuable. I would love to take your feedback and iterate. Is it okay if I come back and ask you some more questions? Sure, Ryan, no problem. Do that. So you start building this de facto like customer advisory board. And once the relationship, they're also growing in attachment, because they're seeing this thing come to life in real time in front of their eyes that they're advising on. And eventually you ask them the question like, hey, out of curiosity, Jordan, you've been giving me feedback for like the last 2 months and I've been iterating. Is this something you think that your team would pay for? Do you think I have a business here? Well, no, I don't think we'd pay for it because of X, Y, and Z. If I did that X, Y, and Z, do you think you would pay for it then? Maybe. Well, then you go do the X, Y, Z, you have your first customer.
That's good advice. I like that quote. If you ask for money, you get feedback. If you ask for feedback, you get money. That's a good one. Last question that I have is, if you could go back to when you were first starting, so let's say your 22-year-old self or 25-year-old self, what one piece of advice would you give yourself?
To listen to people around me who wanted to help more. I had some mentors who, it wasn't like official mentor relationship, but they were my mentors. These were very successful people who I guess just liked me and saw something in me and wanted to help, and I would ask them for advice. But in the early days, I felt like I was a bit of a know-it-all almost, and it's like, thank you for the advice, but I'm going to do it this way. And when you get older, you realize like, damn, I should have just listened to that, because if I did, I would have likely saved 3 years of my time by just listening to that one small thing. So like, if they're the right people and they're proven, they have scar tissue, right? They've been through those battles, they have scar tissue. And if they're trying to prevent you from having to go through the same battles and avoid you from getting that same scar tissue because they've paid for those lessons and whatnot, then you might want to take it a bit more seriously. I probably could have saved a few years or more in my journey by just listening to a couple people a little better.
Yeah. So taking advice, listening to people, and
they have nothing in it for them. They're doing it for free and giving you pretty much sound advice. Like, you might want to listen to their experiences if they're credible, if they're proven, if there's evidence that they've been through that before, right? You can't take everybody's feedback too seriously. Your job also as an entrepreneur is to ingest information and determine what decisions to make from that. And it's okay if you're going to be wrong sometimes. I'm making the argument I would have saved time, but maybe I needed to go through these lessons to know what I know today to be successful with Cognota.
That's a good point too. Sometimes the best way to learn is actually to go through the difficult times, and then it gets stuck in your brain.
For sure.
Oh, perfect. Well, I mean, that pretty much wraps everything up. Thank you so much, Ryan, for being on our live stream. And if you could leave people with where they can find you, what are your handles?
Yeah, probably on LinkedIn is the best place. So what is it? LinkedIn. Like, I don't even know. Let me check. LinkedIn / Ryan Austin 3. RyanAustin, then the number 3. And I have Instagram. It's Ryan Y. It's my favorite question. Why? Because you keep asking that, you get to the truth. But it's all like family related stuff. So, a little bit of the business and personal.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for being on and imparting us with your wisdom. I appreciate it, and I'm sure there's a lot of people here who also appreciate it. So.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ryan. Cheers. All right.